Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up, the podcast for marketers working in early and late stage startups. I'm Morgan McClintock, the CEO of startup marketing agency Firebrand. We've launched this podcast to interview the best in the business, but I'm not going to do it alone. So please meet my co-hosts.
I'm Nicole Pytel, Firebrand's VP of Content Marketing.
And I'm Chris Ulbrich, Firebrand's Head of Media Relations.
I'm Ian Lipner, a tech PR and crisis communications veteran.
We'll drop a new episode each week, so there's plenty of fuel for your marketing fire. Get the spark you need to take your startup to a whole new level. Hello, and welcome to a fresh edition of Fired Up. I'm Morgan McClintock.
And I'm Nicole Pytel, and today we're talking brand positioning. So if you think that a brand position is a logo and a tagline, we have got a great episode for you.
Yeah, today we're going to be joined by Bill Chiaravalle, and he wrote the book about branding for dummies, but he's worked at Landor. He has his own agency called Brand Navigation. And I think this is an important topic, particularly like this rule, this 95-5 rule where, hey, only 5% of your market, your buyers are ever in market at any one time. You need to reach all the people who are not. I've heard it called a rule. I've heard it actually called a law. It seems to be sort of popping up a little bit more on my radar lately. But how do you imprint on that market your brand position so that when they think about a purchase, they think about you in the right context? And that starts with brand positioning. I think a lot of startups, they don't want to think about it early on. It's sort of a vague thing. It sounds kind of hard to grasp and a bit ethereal and maybe just, is this really important? So I'd be interested in asking Bill about that. And maybe there are some frameworks that we can talk to him about too. What do you think?
Yeah, perfect. From our prior conversations with Bill, this is a foundation. And I think most startups don't think of it that way. So I'm excited to jump into the conversation.
All right. Well, let's call him in. Hey, Bill, welcome to Fired Up.
Well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So for those that don't know you, perhaps you could just quickly introduce yourself.
I'm the owner and creative director of Brand Navigation, which is a boutique brand design agency. And I've really been doing this pretty much all my life since second grade, actually. I worked in San Francisco for many years, starting out in other boutique agencies. If you're old enough, you may remember the Michaels of San Francisco, Michael Vanderbilt, Michael Mannering, Michael Cronin, and Michael Mabry, and I worked for all four of them, believe it or not. Then I did the exact opposite of what they were doing, and I worked, at the time, was the largest branding agency in the world, Landor Associates in San Francisco, and I was there for 12 years. And my journey with them ended after we started an office up in Seattle to service specifically the Microsoft accounts up in Seattle, and I was creative director up there. And so I've had my own agency for a number of years, doing the same thing, but just a small team of us, and so I could stay in the creative process. And I think finally, I'm also co-author of Branding for Dummies, if you're looking for something to help you fall asleep at night. So works for me every time.
Literally wrote the book about branding. We love that. I want to start with some basics. Like when we're talking about brand positioning, we're not just talking about messaging here.
That's correct. I think it's a really good question. And this whole idea of brand strategy, brand positioning, personally, I'm a pretty simple guy. And I like things really straightforward and very simple. I think it's kind of been packaged or communicated to be more complicated than it really is. Brand positioning, while it's not messaging, it'll certainly it should drive the messaging, and it should drive everything about the brand from the way it's expressed and experienced, visually, verbally, everything about it. And brand positioning really is about how are you positioned compared to your competitors, whether it's a product or service. And if you don't intentionally position yourself or how you want to be perceived by them, your customer base will do that on their own. They will slot you in their brain. Oh, you're the least expensive, or you're the most expensive, or you're the expert, or you're the leader, whatever that may be, it's really that simple. How do they position you, or how do you want to be positioned and perceived compared to others? It's that simple from my perspective. It's not simple to do, to live it out, but it's a simple idea of what you stand for, basically, in the marketplace.
So how early in the life of your company should you develop a brand position? Because I feel like for our startup marketing friends out there, startups, they may have an idea in their heads, but it's not on paper. Is this like a day one kind of exercise?
Certainly, ideally, it should be. But as you know, servicing so many companies, I have found that most companies are going down the freeway at 200 miles an hour, still putting the car together. And they really haven't had time to pull over and decide, what kind of car are we? Where are we going? What's unique about us? And they generally do it intuitively. That's what they're doing. They're doing it by their guts. But ideally, as soon as possible. And it's something that should be continued to the life of the company. And it's more, it could be an alignment. Are we still being who we are? So as early as possible, because it's really important to define and articulate that so people understand that. So yes, definitely day one, before day one, actually, it should be. But I also realize the reality of business today, but as soon as you can.
Regardless of whether you do it with forethought, you have a brand position, whether it's sort of extant and written down and considered. But if you want it to sort of be more deliberate, you've got to go through some kind of process to develop it. And so, if I am developing my brand position, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to pull the car over, we're going to go through this exercise. How do I go about that? I mean, there's like, hey, we're going to be the cheapest, or we're going to be the luxury brand. Like, I can sort of see some of those, but is there like a process or a framework commonly used for this kind of thing?
Yes, there definitely is. And, all branding agencies sort of have their proprietary way that they do things. But really, there's really kind of some basic pillars. One is understand that there's only so many positionings that you can have. There's a framework, there's models, positioning models. It's not overly complex. I think it's Jack Trout and Al Reese positioning the battle for the mind. Another one I was going to mention later is In Search of the Obvious. I love that book because that's a lot of what I end up doing is helping companies define what's actually right in front of them right there. It's already there. It's not trying to find something new. It's really kind of articulating what's already there. So understanding that you don't have to have something come down from heaven that's completely new, that has never been done before. It's really understanding there's about 10 to 12 actual classic brand positionings. You're the leadership company. You're the original company. You're the value company. You're the innovator company. Or it may be you own an attribute such as, Volvo used to be the safe car. So it's understanding and having those models, realizing and going, okay, which one of these can we build a foundation on? Not three of them. A lot of companies try to do three or four. It's like one of them. I think it's also really knowing yourself, taking the time to sit back and go, who are we really? What do we value? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? A lot of times, you guys probably get this too, is, well, who do you want to be like? There are companies out there that you feel, leading companies out there, and a lot of them say we want to be Apple or Nike. Then I'm talking to them like, you're not Apple or Nike at all. Not that you're not cool or whatever. It's just, that's not who you are. Don't try to be somebody that you aren't. And then I think it's know your competition, because that's how you're going to position yourself and compare to them. So you need to understand them. And then know your customers. Know the positioning models available. Know yourself, know your competition, and know your customers. Because you have to be able to be relevant and have something of value that's important to your customers. So it's a framework that's pretty straightforward, but you need to take the time to do that. And generally you need someone to help lead you through that process.
It sounds simple to say, harder to do, like you mentioned, but so incredibly crucial to what the world is going to think of you and how you're going to put yourself out there in the world. So I can see where you would want some different viewpoints from around the company as you do this. But where do you hit the line between, getting a good collection of people in the room who should have input in this and having too many cooks in the kitchen and just going way down the rabbit hole and never really agreeing on anything?
This is always a challenge in our business, right? I would say as few as possible. And it's not that other people's opinions are not important. Matter of fact, you can include other people in a broader way by throwing out questions. But when it's actually deciding, getting input, getting as much research and input as possible, but from customers to the marketplace, if you have the money to do research, great. But don't let the research, I believe that you don't let the research or everybody in the company define what the position is. The position, I believe, is really key C-level and executive team members. It could be the CEO, definitely, the CMO, the lead creative person, some other key people. But it really should be, I don't think, more than 6 people, if that. It's about leadership. It's about the CEO being able to, or the key team members of the company, the founders, better really package them and articulate their vision. I really see this as really the key to a success when I'm working on a rebranding or a branding project. The key to a success is how important and engaged the CEO is, honestly. It's really packaging that person and their vision. I attribute a lot to raising the flag. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is where we're going. And we want your support. And this is going to be great. So good branding is really about effective leadership. And if there's so many people involved, it's like, I would like to attribute to, it's like, put everybody's opinion in it, put it in a blender, blend it up, and you get a gray smoothie. And no one wants to have a drink of that. It becomes a commodity otherwise. It's everything to all people. So that's at least been what I have found to be successful in the projects that I've worked on, is the more focused the team, the smaller the team, getting the feedback before, but not driving and defining the brand position, if that makes sense.
So you're trying to triangulate here the position of the company internally, who they feel that they are, what the competitors are doing, because you probably don't want to choose exactly the same position as them, or at least if consciously do it, and then you're head to head, we're both the low cost option. And what the consumer wants, in your Volvo case, I want a safe car. You can't be safe and cheap necessarily. To what extent, though, is this, and you're having the core team, the senior leadership team sort of make this extent, to what extent is this unlocking something that's already within the company? And to what extent is it like an aspirational thing? Are we just trying to write down something that they already are, or do you sort of grow into this position, or sort of, hey, look, we think we've been going down here, but actually this doesn't make sense. We should be moving more luxury, or we should be the innovator, or one of those other brand positions, and grow into that.
I think it's really hard if you already are perceived in a certain way in the marketplace with a position. It's really hard to change that. But I think there's a process of realization, just like a person goes through a journey of realization of who they really are. They've kind of always been that, but they're trying to be something else or several things at once. A company will definitely go through a process and journey of better defining and articulating who they already are. I like to look at it as sort of the iceberg. Below the surface is the culture, the value, all those things that they already are. And the tip of the iceberg is the expression of what people see. And you want to align those. And there's a journey of doing that. A company might start out trying to be too many things, and then they realize, well, that's not who they are, and they align that. And so definitely. But I think it's really hard if you have defined that already in the marketplace to change it. And that's why companies, for instance, they come out with Toyota, or, they come out with Lexus, right? because they don't want to dilute a brand that's already perceived in the marketplace. So they come out with a completely different position that's specific to that marketplace. So they come up with another brand. I mean, that's another story brand. That's a whole nother series of podcasts about brand architecture. But I think it's a journey for every company to clearly define and articulate. And it's a process of really discovering and owning who you are. But changing that down the road is really difficult.
Yeah, that's a giant consequence to think about. So our startup marketing friends, there's never enough time. There's never enough resources. They're trying to go 200 miles an hour. But they've only got 24 hours in a day. They may be a marketing team of one. How can having a strong brand position make things at the company just run more smoothly? Does it create efficiencies when everybody has this North Star and we know who we are and we know where we're going and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. It'll save so much time and money and effort. I think it's one of the best things a startup can do. I mean, it's a risk because the advantage is clarity and differentiation and focus, basically. And the stronger that brand position is defined, the better you'll be understood and differentiated in the marketplace. I do want to kind of speak to the idea of not trying to own a position that's already taken in your category. If another company already, in a sense, owns that, it's virtually impossible to take it unless you spend so much more time and money and are so exponentially unique and better than that position. It's virtually impossible. I think that is sort of the key, especially for startups, is to stand out. Because the truth is there's nothing new under the sun. I believe that pretty much every product and service is already out there in some way. Why you need it in the marketplace? And so owning that position and that focus will not only help the marketplace understand your different offering, your different value, but it'll help your team know how to act, how to be, how to put their focus, how the product development, how to sales, how to talk, how to drive the marketing expression. So I think it's probably one of the most, if not the most, critical component that's needed to help focus a company and help startups stand out.
That's a good clarification then. So in our triangulation that we talked about there, when I said, oh, look, you look at what the competitors are doing. If they've claimed that position, then, you're saying, look, just move on and be something else, because in the consumer's mind, just as you can't change your brand position to be something that it's not, in the consumer's mind, there's already the luxury one in this market. You can't also be that one. So you have to choose something.
Exactly.
I find sometimes okay, we're going to talk about brand positioning here, and it feels sort of ethereal and it can be almost intimidating, I think, in some ways, for the very reason you said. Everyone sort of has an opinion. Nobody really knows. It's a bit like art or whatever. Everyone, I know it when I see it. How does it actually manifest? We're going to go through this brand position thing. What's the output when I know it's sort of done? I've stuck a name on it, but what does that look like? Is it a logo? Is it a messaging doc? Is it the visual identity book? Is it all of those things?
Yes.
What is it?
It's everything. Well, what's interesting is it is everything. So there's the obvious brand positionings, Hertz, they take the leadership position. We're number one in their tagline. Even at airports, they're physically located number one. They're the first car rentals that you run into, they're number one, and then there's Avis. Well, they can't own that position. They may be able to take that position monetarily, but in the marketplace, so we try hard. We're going to be the service company. But I want to give an example that's not from $1 billion brand for startups. And this is even more basic. When our agency was looking we're growing and we have network technology and we don't know what we're doing with it. I have some people on staff that are pretty, savvy, but we need someone who really knows what they're doing for network and IT. I saw this Subaru driving around town. It says Paul the computer guy. And his tagline is, I know what the heck I'm doing. And I'm like, that is brilliant. I just want someone who knows what they're doing. And he basically took the expert positioning. And that's how simple it can be. And so, but he expressed it in a way that was really clear and straightforward. Another example is Les Schwab Tires up in Pacific Northwest. And they're one of the, the Pacific North, and also coming down to California. And they're the service positioning. And the way it manifests itself is, I mean, I have to admit, their visual expression is just terrible. It's so bad. But they live out their brand and they talk it. So when you drive up, this clean-cut, handsome 30-year-old guy comes running out to your car. They jog out to your car and say hello. And they basically open the door for you and welcome you and how can I help you? And they take care of you right away. They live out the service. So yes, it should be packaged. It's everything. But I would say, I come from the design and the creative side of the branding business. So aesthetics are really, visual expression is really important to me. But if I was to err on one side, I would err on the experience, fulfilling the brand positioning, making the experience real to your customer base, than the creative expression. Because people can see through a fake, and it's like lipstick on a pig. It's like they see right through it. So yes, it's everything. It's everything about your business. It is your business, the brand positioning. It's like branding is your business and your business is branding. It's everything about you, and it's making it real. And the companies that are successful, the ones that have been able to align that brand expression, the brand position with the expression and the customer experience.
I love those examples because they're so simple. Like, to your point, you don't have to be a billion-dollar company. And I think hearing examples like that, it makes this sound a little less like we're scaling Everest here. It can be as simple as, I know what the heck I'm doing. In terms of your brand position and the way that you differentiate yourself and all of these things that you've shared, how do you keep it current? Is this something that you need to evaluate from time to time? Is there ever an upgrade you need to make, or how does that work over time?
I personally believe that brand positioning models are timeless. They never change. How they're expressed in experience may need to be realigned or refreshed. And you really should be looking at that all the time to make sure, one, that the brand experience is aligned and being experienced consistently. And that really is the life of the company. You're always doing that, right? How it's expressed, trends change. They're constantly evolving. And, it's interesting. A lot of people use the term rebranding, which, I'm not against. I actually like the term brand alignment, because rebranding is, so for instance, when BP, British Petroleum, was it 20 years ago now, 15 years ago, they used to have the shield, right? The corporate conglomerate petroleum company. And then they came out with the bursting flower beyond, and their tagline was Beyond Petroleum. Unfortunately, they had the oil spill, and it was just not the right time yet. It was brilliant. Talk about changing perceptions, and so you shouldn't change your brand positioning unless you're changing your business strategy. It's really aligning the brand experience and the brand expression to be true to who you are or culturally, aesthetically relevant. The expression may be changed or updated, but really not the brand positioning unless you're changing directions of the business.
Right. And so occasionally, I guess some companies may have to take an evaluation and say, hey, have we drifted away from our position? Is Avis no longer trying harder?
Right. Did we lose our service?
Did we lose some of our service here? Or, in the case of your tire company, are the people not running out and being quite as helpful as they could? And they've got to get back to their sort of core values there. And so maybe that's the sort of check-in that you need to periodically do. Let's talk a bit about differentiation, though. I feel like everyone differentiates in the same way. You know, they're like, we're bigger, we're cheaper, we're faster, we're better. You know, we're all different in the same way. How should you really go about differentiation?
Be different. I know that sounds so simple, but this is one of the challenges that we all experience working with clients, and it's understandable. Being different is scary. It really is. It's very scary. And a lot of times I see this happening is a lot of times brand expression is really just a lot of it is well executed commodities. And what I mean by that is you can look very professional and you could look like you belong. If people really didn't, if you squinted your eyes, everybody kind of looks the same and sounds the same, and it may be done really professionally, but are you really different? So for instance, I'll use Virgin Voyages. They're a cruise line. My wife loves to cruise. I not so much. And it's all because of, I just hate long lines. I hate the casino look and feel. Everything about cruising is just, I dislike. But Virgin Voyages has positioned themselves as the non-cruise ship cruise line. They're doing everything you hate about cruise ships, and they're making it cool. So they understand that they're appealing to a different market. So they're doing things differently. And then their website, everything about it is different. Like, for instance, on a cruise ship, it's basically a food line. It's a buffet. I hate buffets. Well, they have 8 sort of craft restaurants that you're only allowed to eat at once, and you have to book them. So you eat at a different restaurant every night. It's not that they're doing everything different, entertainment, everything. And so to me, the key is do things differently. It may be something very simple, and then express yourself differently. I mean, one of the hardest things to do for in my work is getting clients to really look differently. So I'll use an example of a company called Ben Broadband. And they were the largest, and they still are, the largest broadband company in Bend, Oregon, Central Oregon. And what the challenge that they were having is they're having all these national brands come in and taking away the market. Bend was growing exponentially, and they really had nothing different to offer except local service. And that sounds so boring. But how we packaged them, we positioned them as the local dog. And what we understood the market. Large percentage of the people were millennials moving up there. They love the outdoors. And tons of people, sounds crazy. In research, we found out a lot of people own black Labradors. And so we positioned them, their logo is a really sleek black Labrador dog. The tagline, local dog. They were all in about that. But if you had a problem, usually you get online with these national companies and you're put on hold for 20 minutes and you talk to someone overseas. You can walk in to their location and talk to someone directly. And, we gave ideas like when someone moves into the region, show up at their door with a free pizza and say, hey, this is just for you. If you had broadband needs, give us a call. So, be the local company, be the local service company. So to me, the biggest thing is be different. Your service, your product offerings, in some ways, how you package yourself, how you express yourself, be different. Take the courage to be different. It takes courage to be different. It's the hardest thing. So if you want differentiation, be different. I mean, it sounds so simple, but think of ways to do that.
Yeah, 100%. If the dogs and the free pizza don't get people, I don't know what will. But that's a really good example of, there were some local trends happening in that area and you really capitalized on that. Are there trends in brand positioning? Like, are you doing things now that maybe you wouldn't have done 10 years ago, for example?
No and yes. I think that brand positioning is really timeless. How you express it can follow trends. And so there's so much digitally now, right? So we live in a digital world. So taking advantage that people are living online, that you may need to put a lot of your emphasis there in expressing that brand positioning and getting that brand positioning out there and engaging with them. I think one of the biggest things is what I really appreciate with sort of current trends in marketing is being more real, not being so tricky or marketing sound. I mean, I think the more direct, I always like to say, talk to your customers how you talk to other people in real life. So being more real online and just how you talk to customers. And I think being more direct and more simple. Sometimes we can make it so creative and so complex that people just don't get it. I mean, one of the things I tell my clients right away is the easiest way to be differentiated is just be simple, because a lot of the marketing world online is just so difficult. I can't tell you how many times I go to a website when I'm first working with a client, I have no idea what they do. And the positioning is just tell people how you want to be positioned and perceived. Actually tell them that. And don't make it so a puzzle for them to figure it out. Be really direct and simple. And once you have that, then you can begin to be more creative and more interesting and more engaging. So I think there are trends in the avenues of expressing yourself and the ways, styles and tones of our culture, but the models themselves are pretty timeless.
Great. I'm hearing, look, keep it simple. If you want to be different, that's going to take some risk, because inevitably the next question is, well, where has this been done before? Which, is an oxymoron, right? And so you have to be bold about that. But the manifestation of your position is maybe going to be fairly timeless. The manifestation of it might be some new opportunities. You can show it through an app, or you can show it online some way that you couldn't before, and then be consistent about it, because it takes a long time to hammer this home, and you are going to be sick of it and go, well, we've been saying this for so long, but your audience is only just, they're not waking up and thinking about your brand every day. They're only just coming across you. And it takes a lot of time to sort of, to reinforce that. So, you've got to really commit and not change it.
Morgan, I love that. Effective branding is more about consistency. It's more about consistency than creativity. And creativity is important. I'm not saying it's not important, because you're right. It takes a long time for the marketplace to really begin, for it to resonate with them and for them to remember it. If you're coming up with a new campaign constantly and changing your tagline and all these, people get confused and you're going to get lost. And I agree with that completely.
You've spoken quite a bit about authenticity and being real and being simple and being direct. So I'm going to just bring up the giant elephant in the room and bring up AI. So has AI affected how we deal with brand positioning and differentiation? Could it maybe help with some of the initial research? Where does it fit in, or people kind of trying to shove it in and it's more of a round peg in a square hole kind of thing?
That's a big question. And, AI has done so much so quickly, it could be able to do it all next year. I really don't know. But I see it more as like you said, a research tool right now. I see it as a tool. And when they sat computers on our desk, we were sure we were all going to be out of work, right? But it just became a tool. I think it's a tool right now, for me at least. It's a tool for human intelligence and creativity to use to help expand their work or my work. Like, right now it's I'm using it to help me explore how to express something verbally, but I never go with exactly what it says. I put in something and I ask it to write it better or with more clarity. And then I go back, no, that's not my true voice. I don't want it to be that, but it does help a little bit, but who knows where it's going to take us. I really see brand positioning, or the whole world of branding, as a balance, a struggle, not just a balance, a struggle of the art and science of human intelligence and creativity. My process is this. It's sort of intentional accident. I have an idea of where we should go down the road, but it's never exactly what I had in mind in the beginning. It's you struggle through it. That's what all creativity is, right? Whether it's science or arts or the humanities, you're going through a process, and it takes struggle to do that. So AI can maybe help in the process, but it's not going to do it for us. I don't think it, but who knows what can happen in 5 years. But right now, I don't think it can do it for us because it takes the human struggle to get there.
I agree with that. For some areas, like, gives you some options on the words that you might use. In other areas, I know, logo design and the manifestation of that. Here, just give me some ideas, but I'm going to choose. No one's putting it in, into an AI logo generator and just typing in some words and then just picking one. But it might spark some idea. It's an input to that process. But the sort of brand positionings here are fairly classic, and these are, it's just helping with the inputs to that. So just as we think about this coming year, do you have any other sort of final thoughts for startups as they're thinking about their positioning for this coming year? Maybe they haven't thought about it and they need to go into it. Maybe they need to check in and see, hey, is our experience drifting from our brand position? Are we flipping positions too often? Because, in the tech world, CMOs, what's the average lifespan of a CMO? It's like 18 months. So they come in, and of course, the new person wants to change everything. And for us, poor consumers or stakeholders are like, okay, we're on the tail end of that. What's your advice?
This is my humble advice, but I have seen a lot, as you guys have. I've seen what's interesting. When I started at Landor, no one used the word brand. It was corporate identity. Huh. Yeah, brand was for detergent. Brand was for the grocery aisle.
For like a consumer
No
product.
one used that. No, there was the corporate identity. For instance, at Landor, there was the corporate identity group. And that's where the strategic branding people were. But we didn't use that word branding. That's the group that I worked in. And then there was the brand group. And they were the ones working on Tide. And honestly, now, today, you go on LinkedIn, and everybody's a brand consultant. Everybody's a brand expert, and it's overwhelming. And I'm sure they all have, their strengths and their offerings. But I would say for a startup to really realize that your brand is your business, and your business is your brand. And it will be, and it's not just getting a logo done or getting a website up. The brand position is what drives everything about your brand. It deserves your attention. I would say really understanding I can't tell you how many times that, for instance, one company, we understood, the company told us that the realignment, the alignment of their brand positioning, the clarity and the packaging is what helped them be acquired. They had to have the product, they had to have the customers, they had to have the revenue, but the articulation and the packaging and the clarity of the brand is what was the tipping point for them. And matter of fact, when they were acquired, the company that acquired them kept their brand. So I've seen it over and over again, the value of it monetarily, internally, when you have the brand is articulated and clarified well and defined, your employees know who they are and how to be and where they're going. So it has a tremendous amount of value. And so often I see companies figuring out how cheap we can get this done versus as an investment. And it really is an investment that'll pay off both in the short term and the long term. So really see it as your brand is your business and your business is your brand. And the brand positioning is what drives that. And it's really one of your most valuable assets. That's the advice that I would give. And if you're going to do it right. Be all in on it.
Great advice. So if you want to build an enduring business, this is one of the first investments that you can make, and it will really make your company be cohesive and stand out in the way that you want over the lifespan of the company. So I really love that. Our next section is called Fired Up 5, and this is our quickfire round in which we ask a range of short questions. So take it away, Nicole.
Absolutely. All right, Bill. So first things first, what would you do if you weren't in branding?
That's a really tough question for me because I've been doing it since I was in second grade. So I really have no idea. Of course, every young kid would love to grow up and be a baseball player. So maybe that, but I really wouldn't be doing anything else.
Love that. So the career's been going since the second grade. What's the best career advice you've ever been given?
My example was someone told me, starting out early in your career, work for someone that you admire and in a sense would like to become. And that's what I did. I worked for Michael Mannering. I started out and it was such a great experience with gentleman, incredible designer. And that really laid the foundation for me. And then going with Landor, those really sort of was the formation of who I am today. So I would say, don't just do it for the money. Make the decision, especially early in your career, that you want to become like them in a sense. Work for somebody or some company that you really admire and make the sacrifices early on to do that if you can.
Absolutely. So you've dropped a couple of book titles on us already. What book do you most often recommend?
It's those two books. There's more engaging and interesting and funny branding books out there, but I would say Positioning by Al Ries and Jack Trout and In Search of the Obvious. In Search of the Obvious, I love that title by Jack Trout. It really helped clarify, because, a lot of times when you're in these meetings, everybody is faking the brand strategy a little bit. Honestly, I remember being in meetings going, I don't know what the heck they're talking about when they're talking about brand strategy. What do you mean? And these books really helped me simplify it, that it's not that it's not brain surgery. We're doing pretty basic, simple stuff. It's more about focus. And I would say In Search of the Obvious is probably the most impactful from helping me kind of going, okay, I'm not a poser anymore. I actually get it. It's really just understanding there's certain positioning models out there, and it's really uncovering what you really are and focusing and being all in on that. So I would say In Search of the Obvious, but Positioning is another great book. It's like a classic. It's like a must read. But In Search of the Obvious by Jack Trout was the one that really was helpful for me, and that's the one I recommend.
So this next one might be hard since you've been doing this since the second grade, but what's the strangest job you've ever had?
Well, the only other jobs I had is I worked at a butcher shop, a local butcher shop when I was going to college. Taught me a lot about presentation and sales and interacting with clients. It was unbelievable. And then a lifeguard, but for a short time. But I would say maybe not the strangest, but certainly the most unique was working with a 1,500-year-old Benedictine monastery in Oregon to help them create a brand position and expression that didn't freak people out and that it was inclusive and broad appealing to a 21st century marketplace. Everything from those of faith and tradition to those just wanting to get away from the rat race in the Bay Area. That was probably the most unique, and actually presenting in the cloister to 40 monks and having to finish my presentation right at 7:00 because that's when they went into unison to evening prayer. It was the most awkward and strangest experience I've ever had, trying to get all my equipment and out and just feel like I need to leave now. But it was a great project, but that was probably the most awkward experience I had getting out of there while they're all going into prayer. And I didn't know anything about monks prior to the experience. And that's the thing about our business, right? You have to immerse yourself into these cultures and you have to learn about them. So anyway, everything from technology to monks. So that was probably the most unique.
If we ever do a Fired Up award show, that story has to win something. I never thought we'd be talking about monks on here, but
yeah.
Finally, Bill, what's your biggest goal for 2024, either personally or professionally?
Probably the most difficult to answer, but I would say to focus and simplify my time and interests just how a brand should, right? My own personal brand. I want to focus and simplify my time, my interest. And I think to be very tangible is to perfect the art of pizza making, something that I've just begun and I'm really enjoying. It's all about the dough. I'm telling you, it's all about the dough and the heat of the oven.
100%. Now that I'm starving, that is it for the Fired Up 5.
You came for brand positioning and you left with pizza making tips. It's all in here. So, Bill Chiaravalle is the CEO and founder of Brand Navigation. Bill, thanks for joining us here on Fired Up. If people want to reach out to you, where should they go?
They can reach me on my email, bill@brandnavigation.com, or they can go through my website, brandnavigation.com. Feel free to do so. Happy to respond in any way.
Wonderful. Listen, really enjoyed talking to you today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Morgan.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Well, that about wraps it up for today. But before we close, we did want to offer all of our Fired Up friends a chance to grab a mega pack of all of our ebooks and guides. That's our guide to content marketing. That's our startup guide to paid media using Google Ads. It's our guide to attribution. You can get all of those, over 100 pages of goodness, at firebrand.marketing/fired up freebies. That's freebies with an S. And we hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please give us a rating wherever you get your podcasts or drop us a note at firebrand.marketing. And as ever, the details of how to get in touch with our guest today can be found in the show notes. Thank you for listening. And until next week, get out there and crush your marketing goals.